Zach from Grad by California, back out here in Occidental, where I'm ready to show you around for some Sonoma cycling. Now, initially I planned to come out here to do the 416 mile mega hopper, but a few things didn't fall my way bike-wise, so I had already blocked off the time and Mig was accommodating to show us around. Now, we had a little look at the race, but rarely do I have a chance just to let go and have someone guide me around. And there's some fantastic views of all types around here, including the redwoods, and so I knew that this was going to be a nice release just to let it go. So let's roll. Like the Tour Divide, the Mega Hopper isn't an event, but a self-supported challenge. A 413 mile route with portions of previous grasshopper section mixed in like old Kaz. I was deep into the planning stages, but among not feeling comfortable yet on a new saddle and thinking there was a better time to break in new shoes, maybe Vic and I joining Mig and Ian watching at arm's length and enjoying some of Sonoma's best roads was the right move this year. Our plan day one was to follow along on the iconic Coleman Valley Road, getting a little PCH magic before the Bay Hill climb, taking us into Bodega and looping back into Occidental using Joy and Bittner roads. Our second loop was more robust, hitting the old Kaz segment after the Bohemian Highway descent, with our largest climb today up Fort Ross Road waiting, with the views down Meyers Grade as a reward, working our way back to Occidental via Willow Creek. All in all, it was a planned 75 mile, 9,800 foot day, hoping to beat the riders completing their first loop back into town. Last minute preparations took place with the sun coming up, as I hoped it wasn't a stretch that all participants would finish, with already its high degree of difficulty. So what's a little single speed action gonna do? With the start not having the formality of a race, with the like-minded hoping to make it back.
Different? Well, I don't know about that. It's a special type of fun, and you're amongst like folks right here today, and some people have traveled from far and some people nearby. Anyways.
The depart started a couple blocks from the starting point. No one's sour about the extra minute of riding because we were all waking up like Rob Britton with a light 1.5 mile climb to put us into check, opening to a great vista at the top, letting us embrace a good to be alive mantra, as Mig and Ted King knew this may be the only chance to catch it for the day, with our plan just to tag along on one of California's most gorgeous cycling experiences, as Coleman Valley Road starts off with redwoods and 19th century footprints, balancing with the occasional 21st century predicaments, tagging along on this first 10 miles of pavement. That doesn't mean you should be riding a road bike, with spectacular views opening up on CVR's second half, basking with this crew numbering in the mid-20s, including ultra-veteran Zach Morvant, and the first finisher in the recent Trans San Gabriel and Mark Hansen. But I was super eager to share this all with Vic, as he's never ridden this region that I think is one of California's most special. While the Mega Hoppers turned onto Highway 1, though we'd hope we'd run into them later, we took a straighter trajectory because the shoreline is this special. Glad that we had extended time to take it all in, because I could just linger around the north coast for hours, feeling like today's ride was already complete, still with some magic heading south, able to say hello to Tad, Go Bears, who's no stranger to long distances, as this is an ideal way to chop off those miles. Not just flat, but getting a tailwind, interrupted by our upcoming turn onto Bay Hill Road, just as we started entering the heart of Bodega Bay, as Tad bid adieu, sticking to a pace for the long haul. With this 2-mile climb ahead of us, that is the only road I've never ridden on today's route, looking down on one of the most vulnerable places along the San Andreas Fault, but we appreciated the high ground for the views. That just kept giving and giving.
It's not Europe. It's not supposed to be. This is California, and this is the beauty you expect.
We rejoined Highway 1, realizing I normally stay on it to avoid that climb, quickly taking a turn at the next intersection, coming into another 19th century pocket that gives Sonoma its charm into the 200-person bodega, different from Bodega Bay, that's a little different from other enclaves, that was hard to fully see in this fog, as I visited this iconic Hitchcock location before. That all would say is for the birds, though the haze did carry an ethereal element to it, as I've always had that same feel on Bodega Highway, though a different feel doing a 3-mile ascent on Joy Road. That's Jekyll and Hyde-ish, starting off with some single-lane bumpiness, then to a well-groomed 2-laner, and then reverting back to some teeth chattering, with the occasional home looking to add charm, enjoying an elevated reprieve in the middle. Amazed there's enough space for road between these giants, though ready for some coasting, mostly coming thank you to Bittner Road, leading us into the heart of Occidental in 2 more miles, swinging through like Return of the Jedi, able to inhale a bevy of fresh air, leading us back into town about 120 miles ahead of the Mega Hoppers, as likely they would be using this return to exchange some items, although I put my 4th layer back on, holding many chilly memories descending Bohemian Highway, rolling over the route of the former North Coast Pacific Railway serving Occidental and Camp Meeker 150 years ago, now with other transport alternatives, escaping the taller trees and some of the frigidness halfway down, staying on Bohemian Highway, although veering off, which is still the original pathway, ready to start the second half of our adventure over the bridge. While there would be some riding through water today, glad it wasn't through the Russian River, saying a brief hello to Monte Rio on the other side to head west on Highway 116. Still comfortable laying up, though some steepness awaited turning off onto Duncan Road, where we'd have to come to peace to empty our gears out, thankfully more punchy than a sustained effort, hitting the closed and dirt part of the road at the same time, that the Mega Hoppers would cover in both directions, meaning it would start with a climb either way, though I knew the descent would be tricky if doing it in the dark. Not necessarily just the ground conditions, but the history of down trees I've come across, meaning you've got to keep your head on a swivel and make sure your camera light is still live. Otherwise, Duncan packs in more fun than you'd think, where finishing off on pavement is more harrowing, as it's not the cracks in the road, but the bumpiness, and you're probably better off with a bike here. Starting on Cherry Road, I knew we were beginning one of today's prime sections, merging onto Old Cazadero Road, with this small community jammed in here at the bottom, where you'd think these giant trees would already be a big speed deterrent, with the cycling one coming around this big turn, averaging 9% for 1.25 miles. And you'll see some of those who didn't make it up, as the second half involves some freewheeling, a narrow road you wouldn't think needed attention, but replacing this washout shows otherwise, with one final push towards the top, Not just having the dirt is the prize, but the views as well. Worth a moment to take it all in, and then enjoying bonus dividends on the way down. There was one feature I was looking out for that defines the bottom, knowing I had to just gun it to make it through Austin Creek. And Vic handled it pretty solidly with even less prep, but getting out of here is a bit tricky. That's confusing looking at maps. And about a mile of climbing after to keep you honest. At least there's plenty of tree cover, feeling some inland heat. Though when the canopy leaves you, it's good timing being on the downhill, needing to proceed with caution for other vehicles, exiting out over the other fork of Austin Creek, where our Fort Ross climb awaited, but properly predicting we'd head a short distance south into the town of Cazadero. That was the end of the line for the North Coast Pacific Railroad, where you'll often find bikes in front of the general store. Though rubber banding back, it's not hard making the split for Fort Ross Road, covering 9 miles until our intersection with Meyers Grade, as the next 32 miles would be overlapping 95% of the end of the Mega Hopper, with the first third of Fort Ross Road littered with punchy climbs, including a number of reprieves to catch your breath because you're going to need it for the next mile and a half. A steady 9% climb with no let up, making you think about taking refuge with some of the locals, with the house Mig said was in the opening of the Beverly Hillbillies, marking the top of this effort. Fort Ross Road wasn't done with us yet, somehow fitting in 2.5 miles of downhill, the first half being of the steeper variety, though the latter was pretty smooth, thanks to some modern replacement mandates. Though don't worry, there were still some heavy breathing shots I owed you, climbing over 600 feet for the last mile and a half, where you won't see the end until you actually get there. I was excited to make it onto Meyers Grade. So as my joke goes, I've never seen this road before, but I've ridden it a number of times, only experiencing it in heavy fog. So I was excited to have this perfect weather, knowing from my efforts there would be uphills, but the downhills I could now release the brakes, and more importantly, bask in all this glory. While unfortunately Meyers Grade can't be put into an infinite loop, we cooled the jets for a moment as we got ready to merge onto Highway 1. And I'm not one to show you back-to-back montages, but I've made enough videos that this is the place. While the last few miles were already exceptional, there's something special about riding next to the coast, involving a lot of rubbernecking for what you can discover, an opportunity that cycling puts you even closer than sitting in a car. And if this was a modern road, we wouldn't be weaving in and out of the landscape, making the return along these cliffs very quaint, with our coast technically interrupted by the mouth of the Russian River, where we would take our last break in Jenner, wondering how many mega hoppers would take advantage of a resupply, as we needed one last energy boost, but we were fully loaded on smiles for the day. I'm surprised we hadn't already filled up our camera storage. Staying on course, keeping on Highway 1 briefly, crossing the Russian River for the final time today. And even though, yeah, I guess there is one more spot to eat, we decide to keep on moving behind it onto Willow Creek, soon turning away from the river, offering a bunch of flatness going creekside that at the bottom carries vegetation thriving in this wetness, and marks of farmland, now part of the state park, with our first 4 miles weaving in and out of surfaces, paired with clean skies, but that changes going on to dirt, fully enveloped by tree cover, going to need the shade to supplement this effort, averaging 5% over this continuous dirt section for 5 miles. But the mega hoppers would branch off on the barn trail to the left for an extra 300 feet of vert. So I'm glad we were sticking to this gentler grade, with the lower half trending easier, but I was hopeful the mega hoppers would sport this washout coming down from Occidental, as they'd be doing this road twice, finishing on this uphill, with the biggest question whether they'd be doing it in daylight, as I tried imagining that feeling of a 400-mile journey coming to an end, and if I'd be cognizant to appreciate these views. There's still a half mile more of climbing once you hit the pavement, and then it's 3 miles of downhill back to Occidental. All we had to do was make that left turn onto Coleman Valley, right? But you could see by Ian calling, we'd be late, taking a different option, instead heading to Fitzpatrick Lane via Joy Road for some bonus sightseeing at the Grove of Old Trees, with some of the original redwoods still preserved, but you had to dig in to find them, and the scale was a telltale sign, with the trails being quiet for us, though there are weekends where reservations are required, as our only appointment was to merge back onto Bittner Road, giving us a second go around on this descent, where it wasn't totally deja vu back into Occidental, coming up on Ted King, who was only prepping for the next 270 miles, but remember that no matter how gracious the riders are, to give them space to deal with preparations. That wasn't an issue for Matt, whose mechanical on Bolinas Ridge took him out, and there were others.
How's it looking?
Get this one. Compliments of Bolinas Ridge.
Wow. Oh my
God. And there was a root right where my rear wheel came down, and it just like guillotined it. Yeah,
We weren't as rushed, so we had the chance to put in some orders and have our own sit down while others had to resupply on their own.
I would offer to take your bike, but I'm not supposed to help you do anything. I'll pull the chair up for you.
Seeing how worn everyone already was looking, we were curious to see how they'd look and their equipment after the next sunrise. We woke up in the morning riding out of Sebastopol with the town asleep, knowing the riders out there just wanted to close their eyes, as we were planning on about 50 miles today, but riding out to the Occidental area instead of driving. As you can tell, Sonoma has some old footprints, with plenty of tire tracks too. I knew finding Fruit of the Vine wouldn't be tough, though I knew we needed some elevation to make it back into Occidental, veering on to the farm-filled Meyers Grade Road, as there's more direct ways into town, but Mig chose the quieter ones instead, though busier in 2016 during the tour of California. And if you've been following closely the position of the sun, how were we now heading north? But being unfamiliar, there were a lot of questions to answer to take up time, though less so merging onto Grattan Road, knowing it was one of the many ways heading into the heart of Occidental, arriving in time before what we believed ahead of any finisher. Coming across our first rider today, Jeff, who spent the night in town and knew Sunday was more a goal, which would have been my strategy.
Oh boy.
350 left, let's get it.
As we double checked town, finding no other mega hoppers, so we backtracked the end of the course, having to climb again up Coleman Valley Road, when I just caught on camera Unbound XL winner Rob Britton, so we did an about face to hunt him down. And since there was no formal finish line, We had some searching, but fortunately, this town is small, able to catch some first thoughts, though so much to unpack.
How was it?
That was sinister. Just the end of the day, the last. Yeah, like the last, like, I don't know, 23 hours or so. Yeah, well, we went home and had a proper night's sleep. What was that like? And got up and I looked at your dot and I was like, you're kidding me, you and Ted. I slept in a shed. You did? Oh, yeah. You took a little nap. How long? 7 minutes. Doesn't count. Why did you reset?
Ian stopped by to help out with the debrief, while we left for another iteration of Coleman Valley Road, this time making it all the way back onto Willow Creek, not necessarily searching for riders, as we wouldn't mirror the entire route, but obviously this was the more playful direction, and good knowing that conditions were in our recent memory, remembering we'd have to find our line in places, as riding its speed changes your calculations, with time approaching at a different scale, as looking for landmarks of any type were helpful, even if they aren't on land. We were getting a lot more time on Willow Creek than I thought, turning off 4 miles down onto Upper Old Barn to the tune of a steady 9%, so gravity is to blame for Ted King's brief appearance, and we figured he'd make it back before us, continuing on Upper Old Barn instead of dropping back onto the lower, as this region was new to me, with some drama looking what's around that road, getting a panorama that matched the effort, and glad Mig knows what he's doing. Ride-wise, today already felt complete, and everything else seemed like we were playing with house money, meaning I wasn't thinking much about our next steps, except knowing we were headed to Duncans Mills right off the Russian River, so I should have expected a drop in altitude. I just didn't think it would be that steep and on dirt, though I'm sure I prefer this to having to climb it, plus the taller trees coupled with its density felt like opening a refrigerator door on a hot day, though still the question remained on how we were getting to Duncans Mills, not knowing it was directly across the river, and luckily a bridge was right there to take us in. Of course, riding Moscow Road over the Russian River, with this 19th century town perched right there, including more refurbished buildings on the other side of Highway 116, where there's a lot of preserved history of the penultimate town along the North Coast Pacific Railway, as we stopped into Gold Coast Coffee and Bakery, riding Mig's hot streak of recommendations, although I burned a lot of calories making my baked goods decision, and maybe a little too much consternation time to get back on schedule. Heading back over the bridge was a sign of our return, continuing our clockwise loop to Occidental upstream, with Moscow Road a more direct riverside alternative than the highway, also quieter and artsier too, turning our way due south, riding this time up the Bohemian Highway, able for each of us to take turns, with the lower portion much flatter. Good that we even got some paceline action in, against the most traffic we'd face today, though I thought I'd get another chance at a sprint point under the Camp Meeker sign, not expecting the turn into no man's land. Discovering Occidental Camp Meeker Road a more peaceful option than braving the steeper banks on the parallel Bohemian Highway, shooting us off on the northern edge of town. But we rolled straight through, continuing in a southerly direction, with Mig needing to get to a soccer game, meaning we wouldn't be spending much time here in the 19th century establishment of Freestone, mainly because it's so small, although the stop at Wildflower has always been worth it for me. We got back onto Bodega Highway, the most direct route back to Sebastopol, though I know not the safest, which is why we soon turned onto Barnett Valley Road. That's a more low-stress, cholesterol-laden option. Not a lot of centerline action here, just a lot of farm counting opportunities, though still a ridge we had to cross over, with a lot of upside getting this climb out of the way, mostly downhill back, and our wiggling through the neighborhood started to signal the end of our ride, but not our day, headed back later to Occidental, trying to catch as many finishers as the sun came down.
Yay! Congrats!
The first we see was Nick, coming in just past the 35-hour mark.
You do not look as worn out as the other two people that came through. I'm sure you are, but like your look on his face is like far.
I haven't had any fuel in like probably 3 or 4 hours. No mechanicals, and I'm just beat up. So.
Well, now we can help you.
Yeah.
Anything we can do to help you get?
Coming in fourth, Jesse didn't know he was only about 10 minutes behind Nick.
I don't want to brag, but I just hit 960 watts up at the top. I'll give myself a little sprint. So these were 40 mils. These are the biggest that you can kind of fit, and that was rough on Bolinas.
And as I thought, that little extra diversion on Willow Creek wasn't a big hit.
Yeah. It's like a TV show when they just like do an extra season that nobody wants. Because like you come down and you have the ocean, you're like, cool, let's just roll it in, and then you're like, oh no, I'm gonna blow my knees out one more time.
Just as the entourage suggested, there would be only one more fast enough to finish today, with two-time BWR and Leadville winner Larissa Connors rolling in.
That was incredible. That was literally a fairy tale. I know what I should have said to the skinks yesterday.
What?
That dreams do come true. All I want to do is ride my bike all day and all night for day after day after day. And I did it. I was coming down Meyers Grade and a whale breached in the ocean right offshore. Right in front of me.
Only two others would finish, but not until Sunday in the PM. But you knew how Larissa felt about all this.
But ultra biking is incredible.
Visiting Sonoma always feels so fulfilling. This is exactly what you want riding to do. Going out, having options, feeling far away, yet never feeling so isolated. And obviously the views along the coast are winning. As for the Mega Hopper, I'm definitely inspired. It takes a lot physically and mentally to pull this off, and just to even plan it is a big undertaking. So thanks so much for Meg, and we'll be out here again. And if you want to support us, go ahead, hit the subscribe button, go to our shop so we can bring you more from this state of dirt.
Hey Rob, what do you want to do later? They've got new pickleball courts over there. I thought we would, if you would have tied, we would. If you had tied, we would have been like pickleball for the win.